Hello, I have been working on repairing my 2012 GMC Yukon XL driver's side door pull handle. These are notorious for breaking. Craig's Car Care did a write-up on how they did it, and I actually kind of used some of those ideas, but they fabricated a metal bracket that goes across a piece of angle aluminum through the handle, and I found that to be, for me at least, a little tougher. I don't have metal shaping stuff. I tried using a vise, playing with some steel. Honestly, I felt that wasn't as elegant as maybe some alternatives. So instead of doing that, so I used their method of using this aluminum, this sort of L aluminum. I can get the actual dimensions in a minute. But you know, there's an piece of angle that essentially goes through the handle. So in my case, the handle had actually broken. You can kind of see it in there. It's cracked in the middle. So I actually had to spend some extra time fixing that. What I ended up doing is drilling a hole straight through both sides. There's these little ribs on the back of the handle, and I used I think like a 3/8 inch dowel, and I pushed it through, and then I tried epoxies. They won't bond to this weird rubbery plastic, so I used a hot glue gun, and I just basically filled the entire gap on the inside of that handle. But rather than bend, so what Craig's Car Care did is they bent a piece of iron. They secured it with self-tapping screws to this aluminum, and then they tied it in. I think on one side they self-tapped it through this very strong bracket that actually secures to the door, and on the other side I want to say they used this screw hole here, and then they just kind of wedged it in and tapped it in there. What I did instead was I used some aluminum tubing, some thick wall aluminum tubing, and I used some nylon spacers inside, and then I used some number 8 threaded rod, and I essentially created myself a custom length bolt that I put a cap nut on one side with thread locker, and then I inserted it through, and then it sandwiches basically through everything. So normally there's two black screws here and here and here and here. I drilled straight through with a drill bit the right diameter to allow that threaded rod to just pass through. So I'm reusing the holes, and what I'm doing is pushing a piece of threaded rod straight through, and then there's some nylon spacers in here that keep this nice and centered. I actually put a washer on the top of each of these. You can just see this one here, number 10 washer, so it's big enough. It's about the same diameter as this aluminum, and then straight through this kind of sandwiched plastic up, and then a washer, and then a lock nut, and then I torqued that down on both sides. The other thing I did, and you won't see it, but I can explain it, was on this side. So this is where the metal bracket, so you can see the cap nuts I used here straight through, and they're recessed enough where they're actually kind of flush with where that plastic was on both sides. To get to this one, I actually had to cut a hole, or drill a hole, and I enlarged it a little with a razor blade so that I could get my socket in there, because I had to pass that straight through, because this is kind of structural. This plastic goes up and around, and this is what forms the hole for your window switches and whatnot. But basically, if your handle's still intact, what you can do is you cut this to 10 inches, which is what Craig's Car Care did. And then you can just slide it under one side and just push it under, and then you have to get rid of some of this junk plastic. If mine was already broken at this point, then you just push it down. So I had drilled holes where they lined up with those holes on the other side, but that bracket just slides right in there. You have to pull this up a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do now is try and re-secure this. He bound it. This rubber had it was all long and it stretched, so I cut it, and I'm kind of hoping maybe with some adhesive and some playing around, I might be able to get this back to look how it was. But I'll tell you, the thing I did too was I put a piece of really strong double-sided tape on the on underneath where this bracket is. So this is like an L, so it kind of goes over the top. But on one side, this back side, is where it's really flush against the handle. And you can see where my handle was broken in half there. I put a piece of double-sided tape. And the hope is that this aluminum sticks really well to the tape, and the tape hopefully sticks okay to the handle and keeps these two kind of as one. But let me tell you, this is a million times better. I mean, you've got, I use some, I don't know, it might even be thicker than the stuff Craig's car used, I'm not really sure. But I used, this is a pretty substantial piece of aluminum here. I think it's eighth inch thick, so it's very strong. And because it's right up against this, the handle here, and again, there's double-sided tape. I mean, there's a lot of strength here now. And like I said, I feel like this way is a little more elegant. Honestly, if I really wanted to, I could probably make a repair kit to do this, because this really wasn't all that difficult. I mean, it's a 10-inch piece of this 90-degree aluminum, and then, you know, I use a pipe cutter to cut this tubing, and then there's some nylon spacers that are the outer diameter are the exact same as the inner diameter of this pipe, this aluminum. So 2 of those on each side, and that really just keeps the 1/8 inch threaded rod centered in this and keeps this nice and tight. But I mean, so now your handle comes straight through by metal, a cylinder. The only plastic is what's sandwiched in between here. And honestly, there's a lot, this is thicker, and there's a lot sandwiched in there. That's nice and strong. I mean, I cinched that down good. Neither of these are going anywhere. So yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no play in this. And so when you're pulling, you're actually trying to pull this through. And I mean, we'll see how it lasts, but I don't expect that to have any trouble. Certainly not like this crap plastic junk. So I'll post this to YouTube. I'll throw some links out there. Hopefully it helps people. I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna make kits. This isn't what I do, but I could. So, I mean, unlike the Craig's Car Care approach, where he'd have to sort of bend those brackets, it's kind of a pain. This I can actually cut to length with a pipe cutter. I did measure it to kind of make sure I had a record of what I used. I would say it's probably not quite perfect, but it's real close. You know, this plastic handle came in a little more than I think maybe it should have, but not by much. I mean, from the other side, I think it looks fine. I mean, I have to button it up, but as you know, you can see where the handle kind of meets in there. And, well, it's not very good light, but I mean, the gaps aren't perfect, but I mean, you know, it's looking down in there. I mean, from the top, you wouldn't know any different. I mean, it looks fine from the top on either side. So yeah, I mean, you know, this could be kitted for sure. And it's really not a very difficult thing to do. Save you $500. So anyways, hope this helps people.